So, guardian games, everyone's favorite or the most annoying activity for this season. Now, I am using Trinity Ghoul, and I have to spam the insult to injury, as you can see here. Yeah, which is around 5,000 points, or probably more depending of the golden ability empowerment or the gold buff that we can get more points, and we have to keep the chain kills. And if you go back to 0, then you have to once again gather all the points again. Now, as I said, I'm not really a big fan of guardian games, and the reason why is to get the highest score, to get to the top 10%, or in other words, getting the exotic hoverboard, you will have to play on reset on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, and Friday, maybe. Because the points get higher and higher. And it just seems a bit unfair, especially when this involves of spamming the insult to injury. And yes, I did skip a bunch of majors because Scarlet Keep is a long nightfall or a strike. It's not a typical Invert Spire where you can get to the boss fight in 8 minutes or less. This is one of those nightfalls where there's a lot of mechanics of what you have to do. And there's just a lot of things going on, which is really hard to explain. But basically, I'm just spamming Trinity Ghoul. And if I do see orange bars, or if we see majors or mini bosses, we will have to put their health a bit low so we can use our finisher. When just using the finisher, you only get around 1,000 points, 1,200 depending. Then when you use the insult injury with the emoji finisher, you get a ton of points, which doesn't really make any sense. So that means you have to rely on the emojis and finishers just to get the highest points. And it's not even based on using your super to get the highest points. That's completely the opposite. It's making sure you speed kill to have the buff consistently on. From the left side, you see the gold ability empowerment. You must have that on at all times. Just like those elemental charges back in the day, where we kept getting our grenade back so fast, or getting our grenade back or abilities. The one thing I don't like about this is when using your emojis, the cooldown. There's a cooldown with the emojis. And there is certain emojis that the cooldown is more faster. But for me, I just cannot bother myself going for that method. And it just seems very uninteresting and very unfair that we have to rely on this method for guardian games. And this really hurts for casual players where they don't have time to play on Tuesday or Wednesday or Thursday and Friday, and then they only have the weekends. Then they get online, right? And then they can't get the highest points. The points is already higher as it is, and it'll be impossible for the players who just got on the weekends to get the highest points, just to get the exotic hoverboard. My bad. So just like the mechanics with Scarlet Keep, there will be these void orbs. Now, just to let everyone know, I will be skipping a bunch of majors if I can. I mainly just want to get to the boss fight. The boss fight is when you can get a whole ton of points, but mainly you want to use the cheat, right? The insult to injury with the finisher. So you can get 10,000 points. You can get a whole bunch of points. and then you could just make your way to the bridge. But the problem is there is a bunch of majors which you will have to insult to injury and the emoji. But you can see that this is kind of ridiculous of how we have to play. And you'll see eventually that sometimes the cooldown for the emoji doesn't work. And it's just something that I'm really not into. This isn't really a GM or a Master Nightfall. This is just a strike where we have to rely on insult to injury emoji finishers. There's really nothing going on here, just spamming Trinity Ghoul. I could use a different weapon. Or I can use Sunshot with the Solar Hunter or with Lucky Pants. But I am skipping a bunch of majors, especially the wizards, because I don't have time to even take them down. Because I need to make sure I get all the kills. And then if you do skip a bunch of ads, then you have to make sure you keep the gold buff. And then for this footage, I didn't keep it because I just had to rush just to get to the boss fight. Because mainly the boss fight is where you can get a lot of points. But it is kind of funny. You will see the wizards following you, but then you can just ignore them. But there's really nothing I could even talk about except about the mechanics about Scarlet Keep. The only thing I can think of talking about is there will be majors, which you have to be careful when using your super because sometimes you'll just be a bit too powerful, right? And you'll accidentally kill the majors or the gold bar wizards. And then there goes the points, the highest points to get to the top 10%. Do you see what I mean of how ridiculous it is to get the highest points? And let's not forget the ballerina twirls. But just remember, they're not as threatening as a GM version. And you can just simply just take them down with the sidearm. And don't forget to use the finishing touches and insult to injury. You want to get the highest points. Just to make it work. I mean, if not, then it'd be best to just go for a fire team. It is mostly kind of like a speedrun, kinda. Because this is nothing like a speedrun. A speedrun will probably be 8 minutes or less for Scarlet Keep. But because I have to be held back of spamming the insult to injury and finisher, it's a bit annoying and not really enjoyable to do, where I have to stand here, use emoji, then finisher, then look around, see if there's any more ads I can take down-ish, so I can use a finisher. And then you can see I barely almost messed up of taking down the wizard, which is the opposite for a GM. On a GM, you want to get rid of the mini boss wizard. You don't want it to stay alive just to use an emoji and finisher on it. But for this version, for Guardian games, it's completely different, where you want to use finishers with the emoji to get the highest points. I mean, doesn't this seem very enjoyable? Not at all. Really despise it. I'm gonna speed this one up because it's just me running. One thing I forgot to mention is while you're running, your gold buff will disappear. So that means you have to do the chain kill all over again so you can get the highest points. We got an Arc Knight. It fell down. Then it just appeared from the top right. Great. This is just entertaining. Don't mind me just spamming the insult to injury instead of just spamming my super to get the highest points. It's very different because there isn't a lot of champions. Where on GM there's over 30 champions. Where this one is probably maybe 15 or 10, around there. So most of the champions that you have seen on GMs, they're just major Arc Knights. Also be aware of the Shrieker. The Shrieker, for some reason, this version still melts and can take down your Guardian. Just make sure you spam the insult to injury since that's the only way to get the highest points. And I was really hoping they will fix this bug so I can rely on supers, but unfortunately that's not gonna happen. I don't think it's gonna ever happen. But finally we're gonna go to the slowest elevator. And it's gonna be extremely painful. Because not only the elevator is so slow, you have to make sure you take down all these acolytes, these snipers or snippers, so you can keep the gold buff. No, luckily I did kept it. But make sure you take down the acolytes using Trinity Ghoul or any exotic you prefer. You don't even need to use this weapon. Now I do advise that this build is really good for Exodus Crash. Highly recommend. If it is on that day, because I know tomorrow will be Scarlet Cave, then it's gonna be Lake of Shadows, which, let's be honest, nobody likes the new version of Lake of Shadows. I mean Lake of Cabal, sorry about that. There's barely any Taken on that Nightfall. So during the first elevator, usually there's supposed to be a champion, but because this is a hero version, it's a bit different and awkward. It will be probably just 2 Arc Knights and then a Wizard. Just don't forget to not use your super too much, because you don't want to take down these majors, because they're worth a lot of points when you use the insult to injury. Once you take down the Wizard, the crystal will appear, and then you could just make your way to the slowest elevator. And this probably is going to give a lot of anxiety where you want to keep going for the chain kill so you can keep the gold buff, but because the slowest elevator, you gotta wait until these acolytes appear. Once they appear, you quickly take them down so you can keep the gold buff. Now, if you don't have the gold buff at all, then you need to complete the Nightfall or the Guardian Games Nightfall first with a fire team, by the way. Then after that, you can go for your solo run, or you can just go with your friends to get the highest points, depending what you prefer. Now, during this one, there will always be an unstoppable champion. So just be extremely careful with this champion, even though he won't one-shot you, but gotta be cautious, right? There will be 2 wizards, so make sure you use the insult to injury. Yeah, insult to injury. And yes, I know I said it so many times, but that's basically Guardian Games of getting the highest points. You have to spam the bungee out of insult to injury. Sometimes the emoji doesn't appear because it has a cooldown. Then you have to wait for the cooldown. so you can use it again. I don't know how many seconds is it, by the way. Each emoji is weird. Each of them has its own cooldown. I haven't done research on it because it's completely unnecessary and awkward to even look in all these emojis and see which one has the quickest cooldown. So for that, I would say just find the one that you like best. Now we got to go to the slowest elevator. My gosh, it just gets worse and worse. So I know for a GM, you most likely would hide behind these walls or use the emoji so the snipers won't one-shot you or two-shot you, depending on the resilience you had. But for this version, you will have to clear the acolytes as much as you can so you can get the highest points. Deal with these two wizards, which they're a pain for a GM, but for this version, they're harmless as a fly. They just love to run away. Just don't forget to use your emoji. And yes, I am using confused because that's basically how I feel about these Guardian games. I'm so confused of why I have to spam these insult to injury and finisher all the time. We're going to be melting the boss so it can go to the next phase. The reason why I did that is because I want to keep the gold buff going since I did lose it. My bad. There will be a wizard. Usually this wizard here on a GM, you must take it down quickly. But for the Guardian Games version, not so much. It depends of if it's going to go to the right or left. There I was being reckless because I had to quickly just try to get the chain kill. And I was trying my best to not lose the gold buff. And just don't forget there will be two wizards. Run from the right, run from the left. I wanted to use my rocket, but because I can't take down this major and I need the points, I gotta use the insult to injury. And because my emote had a cooldown, I wasn't able to use the insult injury. And because of that, it was just finisher. It only was 1,000 points. So now I'm gonna throw the suppressing grenades just to blind them. And hopefully I can take him down. So I lost my patience there, as you can see. Yes, I said that. Because the wizard was dancing left and right, I just couldn't bother myself of using the insult to injury plus finisher. I wanted to just use it on the knight, and then now the boss is free. He's just shooting the sky, frustrated of how ridiculous Guardian Games is, so don't mind her. I'm gonna just spam my rocket. Hopefully he'll behave, or she'll behave. Then we're gonna have another wave of ads. So usually during the second phase, there's 2 unstoppable champions. But for Guardian Games version, there's going to be 1 unstoppable champion and a couple of ads, majors, and let's not forget a ogre that is a gold bar. Since I don't want to take down the unstoppable champions quickly, which I normally do on a GM, but for Guardian Games version, you have to make sure you do enough damage so you can use your insult to injury and then emote. Insult to injury and then finisher. So then I did it again. Then I had these cursed thralls slowly walking towards my poor guardian, telling me that this is ridiculous. It is ridiculous. So once again, I'm gonna go slide, use the emoji, confuse, and get another badge. Finish touches, insult to injury. Then I'm gonna turn invisible, see where this knight is. Then I looked at the time and it's already 20 minutes. So that means the points I have right now is gonna be completely low. And it's just not gonna give me points. So it's probably gonna give me 4,000, 3,000 points. So when you do hit 20, just take down the boss. Not even worth it anymore. So now I'm going to take down the boss. But then I saw a couple ads and I was debating, should I take them down to make a point of how the points are now bad after 20 minutes? Or should I take down the boss? So I went for option B, where I took down as much ads as I can and then use the insult to injury. Then finally, I'm going to be taking down the boss. But because I saw this major, I said, why not use another insult to injury? It wasn't working. So I was waiting for the cooldown. Here's an example of what I'm talking about, or why I think this is ridiculous. Look at this. See, on a GM version, there's no time for playing around, relying on insult to injury. Can't do ballerina twirls. But for Guardian games, it doesn't matter. We just want the points, right? So once that happens, I use my super. I take down the boss. The boss almost pushes me off the level. But if it was a GM version, I would have just get one shot. Anyway, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye.